There we go. Welcome, everybody. So like I said, we've got folks from Audioville. We got people from video. So we got a pretty good audience here tonight. Thank you, everyone, for coming. My name is Derek Pomenthal. I'm going to be hosting your webinar tonight. And alongside of me tonight, on the other side of the room, is my lovely, beautiful wife, Becky. Becky, say hi to everybody. She's going to turn her camera on and say hello to you guys. Yep. Okay. I think she forgot to unmute her microphone. But anyway, that's my wife, Becky. She's helping me out, and she's going to be manning the chat window tonight. So let me get started by, let's just put that first slide up there on the screen so you guys can see it. Very nice. Okay. So we are really, really glad to see everybody here. We're excited, super excited to share with you some of the information on what hopefully just might become part of a new beginning and a new career for you. My name is Derek Pomenthal. Like I said earlier, I've been a home inspector since 1994, and I've been teaching home inspections as a profession since 2003. I live here in the state of Washington. Of course, our high-tech home inspection training, of course, we teach all over the country, but our home state is the state of Washington, and I have served on the state board of home inspectors as a member for a term. I've performed thousands of home inspections in my career. I've been licensed in multiple states. I've been a business owner, and I've done a lot of stuff in my career, everything from executive management to working throughout the insurance industry, training and development, exam preparation. It's always been a part of my entire career from 20, 30, I don't even want to say how many years ago it was, when I was managing Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants. I was teaching people how to do their job and how to pass their food handler's card exam in various states. So I've taught also at InterNACHI conferences in Las Vegas, taught the continuing education courses, a few of them here and there, had a lot of fun doing it. So I've been in the home inspection industry for a long time, and I love doing it, and I can't imagine doing anything else. My wife, Becky, what she brings to the table here at HI-TEC is all of the wonderful degrees that she has. She's a really, really smart gal. She has degrees in education, history, Spanish, and her most recent is her doctorate in law that she got back in 2019. She has a passion and a lot of training for public speaking, both professionally and competitively. She has a passion for education and communications, and she homeschooled. Get ready for this one, folks. She homeschooled 10 children, 10 of her own children, all 10 of her own children. How do I say that? And several of whom are now in the medical industry as caregivers, nurses, technicians, stuff like that. So our goal here tonight is to take all this expertise that we have, show you how we've applied it to high-tech home inspection training, and help you make a more informed decision about whether or not this industry, home inspections, is right for you. We want to share with each and every one of you what those basic steps are to becoming a home inspector, and as many reasons as why it's done the way it's done as we can possibly squeeze into a 45 to 60-minute presentation. So you'll notice how everyone's microphone is muted. Okay, that's merely for the sake of time. Since no one's been, we don't want anyone to have to be distracted by everybody else's background noise, because tonight's focus is to give you an overview without interruption. You could look at it as, maybe imagining you're sitting in a large venue, a speaker walks up to a podium and presents their material, kind of like old school, the old days. Well, that's tonight's approach, only we're doing it on Zoom and over the internet because we're no longer stuck in the 1970s. So each of you, however, has access to the chat window, okay, where you can ask a few questions along the way, but we'll be dedicating a few minutes at the end of the presentation to answer questions from the chat as best we can. So take a lot of notes if you need to, but as long as everything turns out, technologically speaking, with the recordings, the recorded presentation will also be posted to our YouTube channel the next day or so. And of course, we'll be emailing out a link to that YouTube posting as soon as we get it up there. We just got to edit it, clean it up, make sure everything's good, and then we'll put it out there. That way you can go back and revisit it whenever you want. Oh, and one more thing, be sure to stay with us to the very end, because we're going to give you a special code for a discount on your tuition that's only for attendees of tonight's webinar. So now you didn't come here to get a long drawn out sales pitch or learn so much about me you'd want to go home and cry yourself to sleep. So I'm sure you want to know more about becoming a home inspector and whether high-tech is right for you. So let's just jump right off into it. And first of all, what we need to discuss when it comes to the industry is just exactly what a home inspection is. Let's use buying a car as an analogy, just to compare to what a home inspection is. You know, buying a car, buying a home, inspecting a car if you were to get a car inspected. If the car buying experience was like buying a home, okay, you'd hire someone to go with you to the dealership, and that person would be an expert, and they would do things like check the tire pressure, fluids, look underneath for leaks, inspect the chassis for possible hidden frame damage, comment on condition of the paint and the body panels, and look for rust inside and out, check the turn signals, horn, dashboard gauges, then start the engine. And of course, before driving, if you had a car inspector, they would check various operating temperatures and then test the vehicle under various types of driving conditions like stop and go, city driving, and freeway cruising. And finally, a good quality car inspector, if there were such a thing, would document everything in a written report. They would detail all their findings in writing, and they'd make recommendations for what to do about the deficiencies. So thank goodness buying a car isn't that complex. You know, the experience is stressful enough without adding that kind of inspection into the mix. Wouldn't you agree? But buying a home is more complex because it is more complex. There's a lot more money at stake here, you know, and it can be a very stressful time because of the higher stakes. I mean, look at it. I mean, like we show right here, you can see the median purchase price of a home is about $270,000. Okay, while the median price of a new car is only about $45,000. Okay, that makes a house about 6 times more expensive. So that's going to elevate the emotions just a little bit for everybody. So add to this how we own a home 2 to 3 times longer than we do a car, and how we spend so much more time in our home than in our cars. And you can start to see why it's so much more important to learn as much as possible about the house before you actually go and buy it. And that's why a home inspector spends as much time as he does or she looking at all the relevant systems components of the home and documenting those deficiencies in the report. And they make those recommendations to repair or replace the affected components. As a result, the client receives valuable information, and it helps them make a more informed purchase decision. The real value of the home inspection is, what it's not is it's not the list of deficiencies. And that's kind of a common misconception in the industry, is a lot of people think that the value of the home inspection is the list of defects. Well, it's not. The value comes from knowing that an expert went through the entire house from top to bottom, and during that 2 to 3 hour period did not find anything earth-shattering about the house. It's called peace of mind. And how many of us could actually put, realistically, a dollar value on that kind of peace of mind? You're buying a $350,000 home, which most of us know very, very little about, you know, as far as homes and the systems components and everything goes. So we don't know anything about it, but we're spending $370,000 and we're committing to paying to it for the next 30 years. That's a lot of stress. That's a lot of unknowns. And there's a lot of peace of mind that comes from hiring somebody to come in and take a look at it for you. So what does it take to be qualified to provide this kind of peace of mind? Well, it really begins with your education. Okay, and the education, and that's what we're going to be focused on quite a bit tonight, is the actual education process. Because what do you need to know, and then how are you supposed to get that kind of knowledge to do it? Because adding this kind of value to other people's real estate residential transactions, you got to have the right education and training. And it's usually the point now where we get that question about whether one has to have experience in the construction trades in order to become a good quality home inspector. And like I said, start providing this level of peace of mind. The answer is no, not at all. We've personally seen graduates from all sorts of backgrounds. We've seen them study, go on to have very successful careers as home inspectors, from truck drivers to architects, engineers, mechanics, painters, accountants, salespeople, food service, hospitality employees. I've had realtors take the class and decide they like doing home inspections better than they actually like selling homes. In fact, I was an insurance agent. When I started doing home inspections back in 1994, I started out my career, I was an insurance agent. Oh, and I was diagnosed as an adult with ADD a few years later. Oh, one more thing. I'm blind in my right eye. Literally, I'm blind in my right eye. So seriously. So for several years, though, I managed to perform 400 to 500 home inspections per year. So what this means is that if A half-blind ADD insurance agent can be successful in this industry. Anybody literally can with the right education and training. Don't let anyone tell you any different. I say that, and I want to say it as encouragingly as possible, because, sometimes in class, you've got, one side of the room is the contractors, the other side of the room are the guys who don't come from the construction trades. And it kind of ends up being this dividing line right down the middle of the class where half the class is intimidated by the other half of the class. And it shouldn't be that way. Okay. So yeah, a contractor might have more technical know-how, but they still have limited experience and knowledge compared to what a home inspector has to know. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. A quality home inspection course will include all of the technical training that you need for anyone, to inspect a home and provide a thorough understanding of the basics and fundamentals so that you can be technically adept no matter what your background is. Now, if you do have, let's say you do have the background in the trades, you're not going to be bored in the class, far from it. Oops, I forgot to show this. I forgot to advance the slide. You're not going to be bored if you do come from the trades, because the lectures are going to be talking about systems and components and stuff like that you're probably already pretty familiar with, but you're going to be learning how to assess them, whether you come from the trades or not, from a home inspector's perspective. And that perspective of the home inspector, not the installer or the builder, is really, really different. Okay. And we're going to touch on what some of those differences are as we go throughout the evening, because even the most experienced contractor's knowledge, their knowledge base, is limited compared to what a home inspector knows, because home inspectors are inspecting homes that are as new as yesterday. I literally have inspected thousands of homes in my career, and hundreds of them, when I was back in the Phoenix, Arizona market, hundreds of them were brand new. They hadn't even lived in yet, but the buyer was going to close on the property the next day. They hire the home inspector to come in and make sure everything is good to go, so that they don't move in and find out they have no furnace, over the weekend when nobody's around to come and fix it or hook it up or do whatever. And I've found, believe it or not, a lot of defects in some of those homes. So we're inspecting brand new homes. Of course, we're inspecting homes that are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, up to as much as 200 years. The oldest home that I inspected was actually a home that I inspected in outside of, a little town in Maryland a few years back with a class I was teaching. The house had been built in 1779 and it was still standing, and we inspected it as students. It was a blast, so that puts you somewhere around the 250-year mark, for a home. So we're inspecting homes that have been built from yesterday to 250 years ago. And 70, 80 years ago, there were no codes. So everything is different. You have to have a very detailed knowledge. And those are the kind of things that we're going to be learning about in class. You have to be familiar with how homes have been built over the last 200 years, not just the last 20 or 30 that you or someone else has been building homes. So in addition, no matter what school you choose, and of course, we hope it's high tech, but no matter who you choose, you need to learn more than just the technical. Second thing that you have to learn is how to perform the inspection with a good quality procedure. And then thirdly, how to communicate those findings in a non-alarming way, both verbally and in written form. Now, what do we mean when we say that the findings have to be communicated in a non-alarming manner? Well, to put it simply, we don't want to become known for busting up deals over simple things that can be readily repaired or replaced, especially when it represents something as simple as normal wear and tear, or it's a product or a technology that wasn't even in existence when the house was built. Okay. So for example, in an older house without GFCI outlets in the kitchen, well, that doesn't mean instant death for the homeowner the second they plug in a toaster or turn on the coffee pot. But a quality home inspector will look at that situation and say, okay, it's an older house. They didn't have GFCIs when this house was built. So we're going to recommend you install them in the kitchen as a safer alternative for enhanced safety for the family members. Okay. Now, on the flip side of that, if they were required when the house was built, a good quality home inspector will say it's a safety hazard not to have them. And those are the kind of things that you need to learn about in class. Not only what, but why. Why is it a safety hazard? Why is it not a safety hazard? When is it a safety hazard? When is it not? And home inspectors have to learn how to communicate the findings in the right perspective so as not to scare the daylights out of the client unnecessarily. Okay. It's this perspective that makes the difference between the inspectors who do 500 inspections a year or just 125 on a regular, year-over-year basis. That's why we spend at HI-TEC so much time throughout your training teaching you how to put everything into the proper perspective. So whether you're communicating it to the realtor or the client on paper or verbal, in person, over the phone, you need to learn how to communicate that stuff. And that's exactly what a good quality school will teach you throughout the training, not just in, a 2-hour module. It gets woven in throughout the entire training. So why is this skill of communicating everything in the right perspective so important? Well, the biggest reason is because ours is a business of referrals, okay? The real estate agents refer the clients to the home inspector. 9 out of 10 of your home inspections will come from real estate agents referring you because they know you, they like you, they trust you, and they refer you to the client. We don't want you to get the idea, though, that because it's referral based that the agents expect you to sell the house, because for the vast majority of real estate agents, no, they don't expect you to sell the house. They just don't want you to bust up the transaction and talk them out of every house you inspect, which is, believe it or not, pretty easy to do early in your career if you don't get the right kind of training. And what you need to know is that agents are not likely to refer alarmist home inspectors to their clients because it makes more work for the agent, it reduces their income, and it really raises the emotions, and it gives the agent a bad reputation if they're working with alarmist vendors of any kind, not just home inspectors. So, and lastly, you need to learn the marketing aspect. So you got to have the technical, you got to know how to communicate the stuff, you've got to be able to put it in your report the right way, and then you have to learn how to market the business. See, in today's digital world, the assumption is that a website and a search engine optimization are critical to any business's success. While this is certainly true for a lot of businesses, you need more. As a home inspector, we can't rely on that stuff exclusively. And you're going to need to choose a school that's going to teach you the basics and fundamentals of the search engine optimization and relationship-based marketing together, okay? It's all the technology that gives the business owner credibility. It's the relationship that the agent and the home inspector have that create the value in the business and the longevity, okay? And again, this is coming from 30 years experience in the business. I really thought 30 years ago, when I first got into this industry, that by now, that, because I knew all this technology and everything was coming, I'd read all the books and, I was kind of a technical nerd myself. I had a computer at home 30 years ago. I thought that by now we'd be seeing home inspector commercials on TV and hearing them on the radio. And I thought everybody would know what a home inspector is. Back then, nobody even knew what a home inspector was. It's kind of funny. And even now, when people are more educated, people understand our industry and what we do a lot better. They still don't do a Google search for a home inspector. They call up their real estate agent. The real estate agent says, your offer's been accepted. It's time to get a home inspection. And the client's going to say, okay, who do I call for a home inspection? And 8 times out of 10, they will go with a realtor recommended home inspector. 8 times out of 10, seriously. So without knowledge of both ends of that marketing spectrum, from digital to personal, you're not fully equipped to play the long and the short game of building a business. So you have to learn how to do the marketing. I wish I had time to go into all of it right now, but we actually dedicate 2/3 of a day in our class to teaching you how to go out and market your business so that you can make money. And right about now, you might be asking yourself, well, this all sounds good, but what's the risk? What's the risk that I'm getting into? Because if you're talking about starting your own business, what kind of risk is involved in that? Well, you may have even heard, I don't know if you've been doing some research on your own, other home inspectors telling you how this is a high risk business and you should expect to get sued at least once a year. And that's not true. That's not necessary. Okay. I want to address those questions very directly here. And let's talk about it in general terms, because like I said, we don't have time to get into all of the details. It's what we do in the class. But you do need to understand what your risks are. Okay. And I want to put them in the right perspective for you, because risk is a part of going into any business. Okay. It doesn't always have to result in a lawsuit. Okay. Here's a simple analogy for you. And it's why you see, I know it looks kind of weird, and but it's why you see a cheeseburger on the screen. I remember a time when I went to a restaurant, ordered a cheeseburger, and I can't say what restaurant it was because I don't want to get sued by Burger King. And I asked them for a burger without mustard on it. It's not that I don't like mustard, I just don't like their mustard. Okay. And I don't want their mustard on the cheeseburger. So I asked them not to put mustard on the cheeseburger, but they did anyway. Okay. I'm okay with mustard being on it. It's just that that's not what I asked for. Okay. So theoretically, because I paid for something I didn't get, I paid for a burger with no mustard. Okay. And I got a burger with no mustard. So I didn't get what I paid for. I could, theoretically, I could go down to the local courthouse. I could file a suit against that restaurant and the franchise. I could ask the court to make them liable to me for $1 million. Okay. But how likely am I to collect? How much will that lawsuit cost me compared to how much I can realistically collect? The easier, faster, and cheaper way to correct the situation is to take that mustard contaminated burger back up to the counter. Ask them to make another one. Okay. When we do that, the result is the restaurant usually takes responsibility for the mistake. They collect the bad burger, right? They throw it away and they make a new one. It's because the risk for the restaurant is in making a mistake once in a while. And by not meeting the customer's expectations or requests, they made a mistake, right? So their mitigation of the risk is to collect that bad burger, make a new one, because the cost of making the new burger is a lot less than the cost of a lawsuit. Okay, starting to make sense? Running any service-oriented business requires this kind of mitigation occasionally, no matter what you do. I'll give you a couple of examples. Sometimes people will call me up and they'll say, well, you missed the bad dimmer switch in the dining room. I'll go back to the house, I'll take a look at it and say, yeah, you got a bad dimmer switch, but I know I didn't miss it because I test all the light fixtures. I test all the switches. I test all that stuff. Okay. I didn't put mustard on the burger. Right. But you know what? It's cheaper for me just to go back to the house and I know what I'm doing. So I'll just put a dimmer switch back in for him. I'll replace it for him. Or I'll buy him a dimmer switch and say, here, hire a handyman to put it in for you. That's the cost of doing business. And when you mitigate your risk that way and provide good quality customer service, it's how you avoid the big problems. Because when you do that and you mitigate the risk and you handle it right away, that's how you demonstrate integrity, and people are a lot less likely to sue you for it. And it's a common question that I get in class. Students ask me all the time, how many times have you been sued? I've never been sued. Well, at least not as a home inspector. I mean, my ex-wives have sued me, but I've never been sued as a home inspector. And I think I can attribute that to I did everything that my instructor taught me in my class. Because back then there were a lot of guys out there in the field, especially and this was for real. Back in the day, that a lot of guys would get sued once or twice a year, and you had to be really thick-skinned to be a home inspector. Otherwise, you just get sued out of business and you get discouraged right away. Well, I didn't want to be that guy. It's not that I didn't want to be thick-skinned. I just didn't want to get sued. So I decided to do everything the way my instructor taught me. And I've always mitigated the risk, always done all the customer service things that I teach all of my students to this day. So everything that I've done to be successful and avoid those lawsuits, I teach my students. I don't leave anything out. And of course, the high-tech training, it's going to teach you how to lessen the chance of missing deficiencies and any other details really that you need to know for managing your risk as a home inspector. So how else can we reduce our risk? Well, another way is to, step one, form a legal entity. Okay. And forming a legal entity basically means just going to the state and, filing the paperwork so that you have a legal company. Most small to medium-sized businesses will choose the LLC route, the limited liability company. We talk in more detail about that in class. And, it definitely needs to be a part of your education if you're not familiar with the process, because when you set up a business and you form that legal entity, I mean, basically all it is a piece of paper that says that there's this magical entity out there that exists now, and like for us, it's called HI-TEC Home Inspection Training. When you have that legal entity, and in the rare circumstance where someone does want to sue you, they have to sue the legal entity. They have to sue the company. And having the company protects the business owner's assets, personal assets, from their business liabilities. So if somebody does decide to sue you or, a business owner, they don't actually sue the person, they sue the company. So when they win, if they win, the courts can only, most of the time, attach business assets to the judgment, meaning they can't take your boat or your house. Okay. That's a great risk management tool. In fact, that's one of the reasons why legal entities exist, and they have for hundreds of years. So even if they win, like I said, there's very little chance a judgment they win could be attached to the personal assets like your home, your boat, your truck, your children. I'd be happy to give them my mother-in-law, but I was told not to say that here tonight. So the second way to reduce your risk is through insurance. Okay. Now, when you drive a car, you're taking on risk. You're running the risk of, for whatever reason, you lose control of the car, you hit a light post, it falls over, and it hurts somebody. Okay, you've caused damage to your car, you've caused damage to the light post, you've caused damage or bodily harm to somebody else. Damage to your car, well, that's not liability, but you're liable for the damage to the post, to the light post, and for the medical expenses of the person that the light post fell on top of. Okay, so well, with a business, you take on risk. Like we talked about, sometimes it's ridiculous stuff. Sometimes it's the client calling you up and saying, you missed the bad dimmer switch in the dining room. The risk is in making a mistake where the client is going to be dissatisfied, okay, for whatever reason. And as a result, there's property damage or personal injury, okay? And the business liabilities are protected by insurance the same way our personal risk is when we drive a car and we buy auto insurance. There's two basic types that, as a service-oriented business owner, you need to understand. And the first is general liability insurance. General liability insurance, this type of insurance protects your company against claims of damage to someone through the normal course of doing business. Okay. So for example, if you're coming out of the attic over the garage, you drop your flashlight and you break the windshield and dent the hood and the fender of the homeowner's car, it doesn't matter what kind of car it is, but it seems like whenever I cause damage to a car, I just scratched, a Mercedes Benz or something like that. It's happened to me twice. Stories that I'll share in class. Well, your general liability insurance will pay for the damage to their car minus your deductible. Sometimes there'll be a deductible on that general liability insurance. And the thing about general liability insurance, though, is that it won't protect a business against any damages that result from making a mistake on the home inspection itself, okay? Like leaving something critical out of the report, or you just didn't see a defect altogether. So if, for example, the home inspector misses a hole in the roof in his or her inspection report, the next time it rains, the homeowner, the client, they've moved in and they're going to suffer $15,000 worth of water damage to the house, for example. General liability insurance is not going to protect the home inspector against that type of a claim, okay? But errors and omissions insurance, or what's more commonly known as E&O insurance, will. Okay, you need to think of it as malpractice insurance for a home inspector. Okay, a lot of service-oriented businesses, especially professional services like ours, home inspectors, cosmetologists, real estate agents, insurance agents, all have various types of this errors and omissions insurance. And it's maybe not an exact comparison, but it's an analogy, malpractice insurance. So you make a mistake on the home inspection, and had you caught the mistake, they wouldn't have had a problem, but because you missed the problem, you missed the defect, they suffer an expensive loss, they come after you. Well, that's what insurance is for. That's what the E&O insurance is for. Any responsible service provider, regardless of the industry, is going to carry both general liability and errors and omissions insurance as a means to reduce the risk. So finally, the last way, another way that you need to learn about and make sure your school provider is teaching you, check with your auto insurance agent, because your auto insurance risks will change when you use your vehicle for part of the job rather than just going to and from work. Okay, so when you're using your vehicle to go to and from work every single day, the risk doesn't change. That's personal use. But when you're using your car as part of the job, going from job site to job site to job site, you're driving a lot more, you're driving in a bigger area of town, you're increasing your risk, blah, blah, blah. So that's called business use that you want to carry on your auto insurance. And it is something that most insurance companies will offer, but if you don't answer the questions the right way and tell them that you're using your vehicle as part of your job, then you get in a wreck, you might not have coverage. They could literally deny the claim if you were going from job site to job site, like home inspection A to home inspection B. So you want to make sure that you're covered, and you want to make sure that you talk to your auto insurance agent for that. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, that sounds pretty expensive. Well, relax. General liability and errors and emissions insurance are not cost prohibitive anymore like they used to be. 15, 20 years ago, I was spending 400 or 500% more on my errors and emissions insurance than I do now. Okay. And it has very, very, very little to do with my experience. It has a lot more to do with the fact that in the last 30 years, 35, I believe it's 35 states have passed licensing laws for home inspectors, and almost all of them require an educational component, and many of them a field training component on top of that, which means today, unlike when I got started 30 years ago, there are more educated and qualified home inspectors out there than ever before. So the industry's gotten better. Okay. So I think that that's driven down claims over the last 30 years. I think it's reduced costs. And I think that's, of course, you've also increased the number of people buying the insurance. So all of that stuff weighs into lower premiums, which means technically most of the time, a small down payment and a small monthly premium of less than one home inspection fee is all it takes to get the coverages you need for your business. Okay. And you might notice that I'm kind of deliberately falling short of saying, oh, it's about $200 a month, man. That's because I'm not an insurance agent, and there's too many insurance companies out there. I'm not going to go quoting their prices. But I can get you kind of a ballpark idea, and it's usually a small down payment and less than one home inspection fee a month to pay for it. So it's a lot more affordable than it ever was before. So we've got legal entity, general liability, errors and emissions insurance, proper vehicle insurance. And now, the question that usually comes up is, well, how long is it going to take? This is a question we hear quite a bit. People will send us an email, or they'll text me, or they'll, instant message us on Facebook, and they'll say, how long does it take to get into business? And I know it's not fun to hear it, but the answer really is, it depends. It's hard to give people that answer because I know you don't want to hear it. I don't like to hear it. So it really does depend on several factors. So what we're trying to do is what you see on the screen here are, the process and the difference between going after the process as a full-time thing or going after it part-time, and then whether you start your career full-time or part-time. All of this comes into play here when you're talking about starting a home inspection business. Okay. The education, there we go, as we discussed earlier, is a necessary first step. Okay. It's not the only step. And of course, it's not even the biggest step. Okay. Becoming a home inspector is actually a series of smaller steps. And the first step is going to be the education. Okay. So the time required to complete your course, of course, is going to be determined by a couple of different things. The first question to answer is whether your state requires licensing for professional home inspectors. Okay. If your state doesn't require, and you can look this up on our website, you can go to our enroll page, you can find your state, click, and find out whether or not there's licensing requirements, and then go straight to what those licensing requirements are. But if your state doesn't, let's say, I don't know, California, for example, and I know this sounds crazy, but California does not have a home inspector licensing law. They have home inspector laws, but they're not licensing laws. Okay. In California, you could literally grab a clipboard and a flashlight and tomorrow start calling yourself a home inspector and do fee-paid home inspections, and it's perfectly legal. Okay. Of course, if you live in a state that doesn't require licensing, we're still going to recommend that you get the education. Okay. I want you to think back to what I said a little while ago. I started my career, I was a half-blind ADD insurance agent. I knew I was half-blind. I knew I was an insurance agent, but I didn't know I was ADD. And I didn't know the difference between a hot and a neutral wire. I took a class. Okay. My class back then was 2 weeks. And I had to fly from Phoenix to Waukesha, Wisconsin to take that class. And I was there for 2 weeks. Then I went home for a few weeks, studied, passed the home inspector exam through, back then it was called American Society of Home Inspectors exam. And then I went back to Milwaukee and I had to go, or Waukesha, Wisconsin. I had to go through 40 practice inspections, then go home and do 40 practice inspections on my own. Okay. It was a long, drawn out process, probably overkill. I think we've gotten much better at educating over the years. So I went and I did the right thing and I got an education. All the guys that I knew that said, you know what, I could be a better home inspector than you because I've been a contractor, and they tried. They weren't in business for very long because it's a different industry. It's a different world. The knowledge is good to have, but you got to have the right perspective. So we still recommend that you get the education no matter what. Okay. There's a lot more to being a home inspector than just knowing that difference between that hot and the neutral wire. Okay. Or plumbing, copper and galvanized steel plumbing. So now the next thing is if licensing is required in your state, okay, you need to know how many hours of education they require. That could be anywhere from 40 to 120 hours or more. It all depends on the state. I mean, and every state literally is a little bit different. Okay. No two states are identical. The third factor that's going to affect your timeline of getting into business is whether your state requires you to attend a live class or if they'll accept an online distance learning or a self-paced class. Okay. You see, because with live classes, you're at the mercy of beginning and ending your training based on the schedule of the school that you choose. Some of them might not have room for you for a few weeks, so you might have to wait, right? With distance learning, though, at least you can get started right away. But even with distance learning, like you just take a self-paced online course because your state allows it. All right. Well, you're still limited by the number of hours that you, the individual, can dedicate to it each day until you've completed it all. Now, most of our students finish the online LMS Learning Management System experience. It's just a pure online course. It's a huge variety of reading, listening, watching. It's video, it's slides. It's very engaging. It touches on all of the learning styles. They can finish it in about 2, maybe 3 weeks if they're going after it full time. 45 to 90 days if they're doing it part-time, couple hours a night, few nights a week while they're still working at their day job. It's one of the great things about home inspections. You can start your business that way too. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I have a student right now, as a matter of fact. He's taken the class online, and he's a single dad. He's got 3 daughters. I think their age is like 7 or 8 to like 13, and he homeschools them. So he's a single dad homeschooling 3 daughters. And he's trying to go through class. So it's taking him close to that 90-day range to get through the class. In fact, I would say he's right on pace to be finishing it up at about the 90-day mark. He's about 2 months into it, just over 2 months, and he's about 65, 66% through the course. So everybody's going to be different. You're going to get out of it what you put into it, but saying that is so cliche, nobody likes to hear it. So you have to take into consideration what your state requires, whether it's, you can do a distance course, and how much time you have to dedicate to it. Okay. Another element is whether your state, if they have licensing, whether your state requires you to have field training as part of your licensing requirement. Some states require a candidate to do practice inspections with a licensed home inspector. That could be in hours, it could be in the number of inspections, or a combination of the two. It, again, depends on your state. It'd take us several hours to review each of the 35 plus states licensing requirements. Boring, so we're not going to go through them, but we can help answer your questions, of course, when you call us, or you can go to our website and look it up. Either one. I mean, we'd be happy to talk to you about this stuff. During business hours, give us a call. Our phone number is on everything that you see. Or, I'm almost always on Facebook one way or the other. I'm getting a lot more used to my wife doing all the driving just so I can be on Facebook, to answer student questions now. We can help answer all of those questions, whether it's in person, whether it's over the chat, however you want to do it, or you can just go to our website. Another option is to, use our website and click the link, that goes directly to the state's licensing requirements. Now, the last timeline factor that we'll talk about has to do with whether you'll be going into your new career full or part-time. Okay, that's very important. That plays a big part in how soon you're going to get into business. Many home inspectors begin their career part-time. That way they can keep their day job, so they can keep their income, their benefits, and all that other stuff while they build the home inspection business in their spare time. Over the years, I have had a lot of first responders in my class that go on to be very successful first responders and home inspectors. You know, because firemen, police officers, they get that 3 days on, 4 day off kind of schedule, depending on where they're at. And they have this wonderful opportunity to where, you know, they work for 3 days, take a day off, and then work 3 days in another business, you know. And they go on to create some pretty successful home inspection businesses as a result. And some other folks, you know, they work a day job, maybe they work an earlier shift, maybe they work a later shift. They have the mornings or they have the afternoons to go out and do marketing and build a home inspection business and do home inspections. And of course, there's always the weekends too. And it'll take you a couple of years to ramp up to the equivalent of a full-time income if you start approaching your home inspection business from a part-time perspective. For those of you more like me, I dove right into it full-time. You know, if you want to do that, build your business as soon as you possibly can. Well, with the right marketing efforts, and like I said, we're going to teach you that if you choose HI-TEC, you can reasonably expect to do about 125 inspections in that first year, and as many as 300 in a year or two, or in year two, I should say. That cuts your timeline in about half. So once you've received your education in states with the licensing laws, you'll almost always certainly have to pass the National Home Inspector exam. Okay, that's usually the final part before you send in your paperwork. It's a 200-question professional exam. It's in multiple choice format. You're given 4 hours to take it, and a passing score is considered adequate demonstration of minimum competency. Okay, when you choose your school, be sure to ask whether the curriculum covers exam preparation. Okay, learning how to be a home inspector is one thing. Learning how to pass the exam is another. You got to have both. Okay, you want to make sure that their material is relevant to the exam. Our curriculum uses the textbooks that are authored by the National Home Inspector Exam Board. Okay, these are the people who wrote the exam. They're the ones who wrote these books. Okay, and they are the most relevant textbooks in the industry. We add to it. I'm sorry. Our insights, our experience, our wisdom from over the last 30 years in the home inspection industry, so that our students get the best of both worlds. All the technical for passing the exam and the skills to inspect, report, and communicate and have a good long-term career as a home inspector. So once you've completed the first 3 steps, you can send your application usually into the state and get your license. Okay, and again, the process is going to vary a little bit from state to state. And if you have any questions when you're looking at those licensing requirements, just give us a call. We'll be happy to help you out. Becky is brilliant when it comes to all of this compliance. She's got all this stuff. She can't pull it off the top of her head because 35 states licensing law is kind of hard to memorize, even though she does have a doctorate in law. But she's got it all organized, and she can answer those questions lickety split for you. You know, we've also had to jump through all the hoops of getting our school approved. So we're pretty familiar with all these processes, and we can help you out. Now, we've covered education. We've covered basic licensing requirements, typical timelines too. Now, I'll just bet by now you're wondering how much all that costs, right? Well, to sum up the numbers that you see on your screen, starting a home inspection business is a relatively low upfront investment when you compare it to national franchises or other business opportunities. So generally, the investment to start a home inspection business just for one person, for example, is less than $10,000. Okay, and that means you can literally start your business on a shoestring budget and recoup your initial investment quickly. Just to give you some a little bit of compare and contrast, I just watched this documentary on, I think it was Amazon Prime, Lula Rich or something like that. It's about that leggings company, the clothing company, multi-level marketing company. To buy into that thing, you know, when they took off and got really, really super big and got way too big for their britches, pun intended, was $5,000. You know, the difference though between a home inspection business and a legging business and a multi-level marketing tier is that, you know, in 13 tiers, you haven't used up the whole population. There's still plenty of opportunity, and you can make a lifelong career out of home inspections. Okay, the way to look at it, the investment is exactly the way I'm going to show you on the next screen. You can see, that if the investment is going to be $10,000 on average. And the average home inspection fee right now is about $400 to $450 across the United States. Well, you divide that investment by $450. You got to do 22 inspections to recoup 100% of your investment. Okay. How many of you think you can do 22 inspections your first year in business? Okay. Most people do, on average, home inspectors do about 120 to 130 home inspections in their first year, and they do about 305 in their second year. And then, you know, from there, sky's kind of the limit. I capped out at about 500. And because I didn't want to work any harder, because I was a single dad too for many years, raising my two boys. So considering how each of those 22 inspections is only a 2.5 hour job, that's less than 63 hours of work for $10,000 of income. How much do you make right now in 2 weeks at your current job? Okay. That's the difference. Okay. Yes, there's expenses. Of course, there's taxes, but you're going to pay taxes whether you work for somebody else or start a business. So starting to see why we get so excited about talking about this. I love doing what I do because I get to teach people how to take advantage of this kind of opportunity. I've been doing it for 20 years and I love it. You could start for a lot less though, if you go to work for a multi-inspector firm. And I'm sure some of you might be asking yourselves that, yeah, well, what about working for somebody else? There are some drawbacks to being employed by someone else. First, your schedule could be not as flexible. Okay. What I mean by that is, when you own the business, you can schedule with home inspections, you can schedule business around life instead of the other way around, scheduling life around the business. Okay. You don't want to become a slave to the business, but when you go to work for somebody else, you're going to be on their schedule. You're going to work when they tell you to. That could be 5-6 days a week. And by the way, they probably won't employ you. They're going to hire you on a 1099 basis, make you buy your own tools and provide your own vehicle and all that other stuff. Okay. So the next thing is the next drawback. Okay. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying there's drawbacks. There's downsides to working for somebody else. You're only going to get a 30 to 50% commission on the inspections that you do. Now, some guys are happy with that because they're happy to trade 50% commission for not having to run the business. Okay. I'm not, because overhead for a home inspection business is about 15%. Okay. Actual expenses. Okay. Actual versus what you write off. Let's not go there. So third, expect to be required to sign, if you go to work for somebody else, a non-compete or an employment contract type agreement, because it's very expensive to bring somebody into the fold and teach them how to do business your way, and then have them go out and build a business, and then a year later quit and take all that business with them. It's a huge loss for businesses. So the intelligent thing for a business owner to do is, when you hire somebody in a relationship-oriented business like ours, make sure you have them sign a non-compete or an employment contract. Okay. They want to recoup their investment. They want to increase profits by retaining employees. Okay. So yeah, you might be able to cut your dime on cut your teeth on somebody else's dime. And then again, they might make you pay for your own mistakes. They might provide insurance and stuff like that. But be wary of the small guy who says, oh, I'm expanding. I got so many inspections, I can't do them. I got 300 inspections I could give you now. Yeah. Try to verify that as best you can. That's usually not the case. So be careful when you're going to work for somebody else. And when you're researching schools, ask them to quantify how their curriculum prepares you for the career path, independent or working for somebody else. Okay. The good news is HI-TEC, we teach you, either path. You're going to be prepared no matter which path that you decide to take. How much money am I going to make? Well, that's another big question that we get. Probably the second most common question right after, how do I get in the business? Now, you're not going to be the next Bill Gates or the next Warren Buffett. The income potential is certainly likely, though, to be more than you could make in corporate America or pounding nails for somebody else's construction company. And when you look at the numbers, independent home inspectors do, like I said earlier, an average of about 305 inspections per year. Okay. About 120 to 130 their first year, 300 plus after that. Now, those are insurance statistics. Those come from insurance companies that sell insurance to multi-inspector and independent home inspectors, the E&O that we were talking about earlier. So if you're doing an average of 305 a year, average fee is $400 to $450 each. That means before expenses, that 15% overhead. The income potential, yeah, it's $137,000. Some sources say the average home inspector only makes $60,000 or $70,000 a year. Now, why is that? Like you see over here on the right-hand side of your slide, it says, according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, 60 to 70,000. Well, why is that? Well, I think you're full of doo-doo, man. No, it's actually because when you look at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics numbers and you look at their description, their definition is a building inspector. That includes home inspectors, but it also includes all those guys that go out there and check construction sites to make sure the contractor is building the house right. Okay. Government employees. Okay. So that $70,000 figure comes from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. It's categorized as building inspectors, home inspectors, government employees on hourly wages, visiting construction sites. The numbers we're sharing with you on the left are a lot more accurate because they come from the insurance industry and they don't deal with building inspectors and municipalities that way. And if they do, they sell them an entirely different insurance policy. They're the folks who provide the insurance to thousands of home inspectors across the United States. And I'm pretty sure, let's see. Yeah, Becky should have a link to an article that will substantiate that for you if you want to look that one up. Even better than income, some of our most successful graduates will tell you that the icing on the cake is how much they enjoy the business and doing home inspections. It's an honest business, where you can go home each and every day knowing in your heart of hearts you helped as many as 3 families make a better decision and avoid costly surprises and safety hazards in that first critical year of homeownership. You're the hero of the day, and it's the best feeling in the world. Right after that feeling that you get the first time you answer the phone and you hear somebody say, yeah, I need to schedule a home inspection. That's a pretty addictive sound. I love both of them. And I love it when, the client says, thank you. You've saved us a lot of money. Even if they don't, I know I've saved them a lot of money, and you learn how to do that in a good school. I recently did an inspection where the buyer was an elderly woman. She was in her 70s. Everything about the house looked typical. You look at the pictures in the ad, everything looked good. I mean, even above average, because there was fresh paint throughout the house. The appliances were all polished and shiny. The carpets recently shampooed. But unfortunately, after 2.5, 3 hours in the house and doing my inspection, I was able to uncover serious structural problems with the roof, and how the cabinets, appliances, countertops weren't adequately secured or installed throughout the house, and how many of the major systems and the components were at the end of their typical life expectancies, like the furnace, the water heater, the air conditioner, and the roof surface itself. If we had to guess, we'd probably estimate somewhere in the neighborhood of about $50,000 to make the house livable beyond the first few months that my client would have been in the house. So, of course, she was really grateful that I'd done such a thorough job, because she didn't have the money. She didn't have the ability. She was in her 70s and she was a widow. She didn't have the wherewithal to make all these repairs. So she backed out of that one. She went and found another house a few days later, bought it. Okay. Much better house, much better condition, same age, same price range. Just had much better conditions in it. And I remember feeling afterwards how and I always feel this way. I don't like it when a client backs out of a deal, because there's always that opportunity for the real estate agent to say, shame on you, you busted up the deal. You know what, though? I know, and you should be taught and trained on the difference between busting up a deal with your communication skills and the house busting up the deal. If the conditions of the property bust up the deal, you've done your job, and there is nothing wrong with it. Okay. You always have that feel of unease, right? Like I did that time, but that's the priceless aspect to what we do. Someone once told me, speaking of priceless aspects, that money doesn't buy you happiness, but it does buy you freedom. Talk to any independent home inspector who's been in the business for 3 or more years. I'm serious. Talk to any of them, and they'll tell you how they love the flexibility of scheduling their work around life, whereas when they work for somebody else, it was the other way around. We left that lifestyle behind years ago. I know I did. I even went back to corporate America, I guess because I'm a glutton for punishment, for a few years after I started my home inspection. Or I actually started out working for somebody else. Didn't like it, so I went back to insurance for a few years. And this was many, many years ago. But I went back to corporate America, and I was miserable. I couldn't wait, to that opportunity where I could wait out my non-compete, leave corporate America, and go do home inspections again and enjoy being in control of my life. One of the most rewarding things about teaching home inspections is I get to assist other people in making that kind of life decision and in changing their lifestyle. I get the satisfaction of seeing them reap the benefits. I mean, how many of you know another business where you could get into that business for less than a $10,000 investment, and by the second year, pull down a 6-figure income and have that much fun and fulfillment doing it? Legally, of course, for you Breaking Bad fans. So real quickly here, because we're starting to run out of time, How do you know you're choosing the right school? It's easy for us to just say, oh, just call us, nobody else. That's not, the kind of answer that you're looking for. We promised you an education tonight, and that's what you're going to get. You want to make sure that a school is covering all of these topics. They're going to teach you technical communication from verbal to written, to clients, to contractors, all that stuff, real estate agents. What's the instructor qualifications? An instructor who's a great home inspector doesn't necessarily make a great instructor, okay? You want to make sure that they're an instructor that you can gel with, someone that you can get along with, somebody who's going to teach in a way that you're going to learn from, because we all have different learning styles, but very few instructors have multiple teaching styles. We try to incorporate as much as we can, in touching on all the learning styles at HI-TEC. So ask to speak to the actual instructor that's going to be teaching the class. Chat with them for a little bit. And if they're uncomfortable with you talking to their instructor, well, that says a lot for what they think about their instructor. And don't get caught up in the hype. There's a lot of marketing hype out there, because for the longest time, there's only been a couple of schools out there to choose from. Now you have options. You have more than one or two options. And some of the schools have been around a while. They promise a lot of really weird stuff. Nobody's ever called them the carpet on it. I hate to say this, but when they say, yeah, we've got all these locations all around the country. Okay, what do those 70 or 80 locations mean? Okay, you'll probably be interested to find, when you ask them what they are, their locations are just hotel meeting rooms, or it's a leased classroom, where they're literally leasing a classroom from a tech school or a college on their campus. They say we're affiliated with all these universities. Yeah, what does that affiliation mean? Does that mean you're renting a classroom on their campus, or are you really, accredited through that college? Most of the time, it usually just means that they're leasing the classroom on the campus. Okay, ask these kinds of questions. Don't be overly impressed. It doesn't make them a bad school. Don't get me wrong. It does not make them a bad school to try and look as credible as they possibly can. But you don't want to fall for the hype. Make them quantify it. Okay, ask the difficult questions. Make them define their terms. And whether full or part-time, the HI-TEC training is beyond adequate. It's simply the best home inspection educational program that you'll find. Your instructor, which 9 times out of 10 is me, is very engaging, makes the mundane material memorable, ensures every student learns the materials. That's what we're all about. If you're a methodical learner who takes a lot of notes, makes checklists, puts a tab on every page of your book, or if you're the kind of learner whose book looks like it was dipped in highlighter ink, or if you just need to sit back and listen to someone to share a wealth of knowledge to you in order for you to learn, okay? HI-TEC's the school for you, because we try to touch on all of these different learning styles for you, okay? We try to put all this together. And be wary of the school that provides that sales pitch in class, okay? If they're going to give you a sales pitch in class, ask them that. And if they say, oh yeah, okay, what are you trying to sell me in class? Discuss that in the beginning, so that you can make the best possible decision for your business going forward before you get into class, okay? We never take valuable time out of the classroom to give you a sales pitch. Of course, we're going to talk to you about reporting software, business cards, brochures, website hosting. We're going to show you all the places you need to go to get it, but we're not looking to profit from it, and we're not going to take valuable class time to try to sell it to you. That way we can pay our instructors more from your pocket and less from ours. That's not what we're about. So to sum it up, HI-TEC's qualifications: we have the experience, we have the style, we have the educational know-how to train you for your new career. Okay, something is dinging in my ear and I don't know what it is. We never give you a sales pitch in class, only relevant information that you need to be a success as a home inspector. We'll even support you after graduation with access to your instructors by mail, by text, or telephone within 1 business day when you need additional answers. You call us, you text us, you yell, hey, yo, like Rocky said years ago, we'll call you back. We'll get back to you within 1 business day. And be wary of the school that promises it as being immediate too. That's really, really, really difficult to promise to keep. It's really tough to keep 10 or 15 people, experts on staff all the time to take all of your calls. It's not realistic. We do promise to get back to you within a day though, okay? Sometimes just because we need the time to research your question, okay? It's how we give you the high ground advantage. So as promised, here's the discount that we talked about, because we're coming up to the end here, and then we'll take some questions. Here's the discount we talked about. Use this code when you call or register for your online class, online or in-person class, HI-TEC 15. Okay, we're going to put that coupon code into our website so that if you're going to just purchase one of our online classes, you can put in that code and get a 15% discount. It's only good for January classes, or for the month of January, depending on how you want to look at it. If you're going to take one of our live classes, $700 deposit is all it takes. But you put down that $700 deposit, you can get the 15% discount. Now that 15% could be a discount from anywhere from $135 to $600, depending on your state and which course that you choose. Okay, this is an exclusive discount. We're not offering it anywhere else. So it's not on Facebook. It's not on our website. It's not on the YouTube channel. This is not a gimmick. We just wanted to be able to say thanks for taking the time to learn more about our industry, about our company, and giving Becky and I the chance to share a little bit about ourselves and our business with you tonight. So let's see if you guys have a question. If anybody has a question, go ahead and type it in the chat window here, and I'll take a couple of questions before we close for the evening. Anybody got any questions? I don't see any coming. You can't tell me I was that good of a presenter. Even my students have a lot of questions. Okay. Well, maybe not. And that's perfectly okay too. If you do have any questions, Becky, why don't you go ahead and put our phone number? Oh, here we go. Austin is asking, is there any on-the-job training with the schooling? On the job training, no. But Austin, if you're talking about hands-on training, it depends on the course and school in the state. If you could just type in there, Austin, what state are you in? California or Florida? No, there's not. We don't have anything as part of the curriculum, okay, that would give you that type of field training. But we are toying with the idea of doing some live online field training type classes. They may not actually count towards field training hours in some states. Some states they will, most states they won't. And we certainly have a lot of options there for you. Plus, we can help you find somebody who's willing to take you along to do some ride-alongs. But we're going to teach you in class how to do the home inspection, how to practice them on your own, use us for your ongoing support so that you don't need to go out there and get that type of one-on-one field training. And the reason why, Austin, is because very few home inspectors are willing to take other home inspectors under their wing just out of the goodness of their heart. It's really hard to find someone who's willing to do that. So that's a very good question. So any other questions? And oh, you're welcome, Austin. I can barely see this. I'm going to put this chat window over here a little bit better. I can see it. Okay. Well, that concludes our webinar for the evening. Be sure to call us. Make sure you use that exclusive code HI-TEC 15. When you type it in, I'm going to type it into the online payment thingy as all caps. Okay. Make sure you use that for your 15% discount when you're enrolling in a live January class or enrolling in an online class before the end of January. So again, my name is Derek Palmaville, and from Becky and I, thanks again for being here. Good night and God bless. Take care.